Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Changing the Narrative podcast. We're here today with another special guest, Milton Dodd, who I'll let introduce himself here in just a second. But Milton, thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. So for the guests that are listening here, we always like to try to bring people that we feel like have some very meaningful and impactful things to say. So could you start by just kind of sharing with the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, and ways that you're kind of, being involved in the community?
Sure. Well, when you started with meaningful, impactful, you probably should have chosen someone else. But my name is Milton Dodd. I've now lived in the Twin Cities my second tour of duty here. I moved here when I was very young, and I've been back here since 2012. Currently residing in Plymouth, and I'm my wife and I of 23 years. Kendra is my bride, and we have three kids. We have a junior in college, a junior in high school, and what I consider to be a junior in elementary school. We had a little surprise there about 8 years ago. I claim to be an avid golfer, so I'll start with that. But I played this morning before church, and it looked like I was a newbie. So I'm kind of questioning, am I really an avid golfer? But professionally, I work in health and benefits consulting with Willis Towers Watson.
Can you tell us? I know that it's kind of an interesting. I know a little bit about this, but
Sure.
when you say you're an avid golfer, like
Right.
we got a lot of black men, and we talk about changing the narrative, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into golf specifically. Because we know traditionally it's not necessarily a black sport, but it's interesting because I know you play a lot.
Um, you know, yeah, I play quite a bit, but a lot means I play a lot on the weekends. I don't typically have a lot of time to play, but I try to pack it in. But it's an interesting story. I've only told the story a few times. So back when I was in high school, I was part of Inroads, and if you know the program Inroads, they give you internships starting when you leave high school. You start working in organizations, and I happened to be at Crum and Forster, ironically, which was an insurance agency at the time in Bloomington. And there was a man named John Rosenthal. Still can't believe I remember his name to this day. John Rosenthal took to me and he said, if you want to be in business, you have to learn to play golf. And at this time, I'm 18 years old. And so John made sure I had an investment. He came to me with an old vinyl bag and some hodgepodge clubs. And every other day after work, he would take me to the driving range out by the airport. I can't remember the name of it, but that's where I started. I was about 18 years old when I developed my love for the game of golf. And it was all because of John Rosenthal.
Wow.
Very, very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. So I'll jump back on track here.
No
So
worries.
yeah, as how important to you is being a black man in the career field that you're in? I know you deal with clients and customers and whatnot, but how important to you is that the fact of being a black man in that career field?
I'm going to take a step back because when I saw that question, what I thought about is it's important to have black men in many different career fields because I think of the knowledge transfer or the knowledge share. There's a lot of things that we don't know or we're not exposed to until we are around people who sometimes look like us and we're more trustworthy of them in some cases. So having people of color in a number of different fields, I think is very important for that very reason. Now, specifically in the healthcare field, I've been in this organization for less than a year now, but you learn so much about the importance of health, not just health, but financial well-being, mental health, general well-being. And we all know the disparities that face us as African Americans, hypertension, stroke, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and the list goes on. And just by having people who have some additional information that can provide some color commentary when you're making those decisions about, am I going to take better care of myself? And I early on in my career, I wasn't a fan of going to the doctor. And by having people in these different places like I am today, it casts a light on the importance of doing these things from a preventative standpoint, such that we can be more healthier long term. Because I think in general, we have our life expectancy as Black men is a lot shorter than most.
Mm. Wow.
Good on.
That's good.
Appreciate that.
When you were talking, I remember last year I got to go to it was like a Black men's wellness conference. And one
Mm,
of the things one of the speakers said that it'll stick with me forever is what did he say? An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of medicine. And
yeah.
and that was something that I mean it stuck with me. I mean, it's here we are a year later, and as you were talking, I remember hearing that in that conference. So I'm glad that you're in that industry because, like you said, we definitely need it for sure.
Yeah, and I'll add there's a lot of information around healthcare disparities, et cetera. And again, having that access and to be able to share that knowledge with others, I think demystifies what it is to take great care of yourself.
Yeah, awesome. So what motivates you to do what you do every day? I mean, what you just said, I'm sure is part of it, but I mean, we can go deeper with that. So, are there other things that motivate you to continue to move forward in the industry you're in?
Yeah. Well, I started with my three crumb snatchers. Fortunate or unfortunately, when I grew up, my parents, my mother passed away from cancer when I was 17. My father wasn't directly in my home, but I knew who he was, but he consequently passed away in 1995. So I've been at this, I've been a somewhat of an orphan for a long period of time. And I'm very blessed to be here for my children for the last 21 years of my son's life, 17 of my daughters, and 8 of my youngest. And I want to be here longer. I want to do my part. I don't have full authority or full control over that, but what it is I can control, I'm trying to do. Before before my son Benjamin came along, I ran Tough Mudders and I did Murphs and things like that. And I got a little out of balance over time. But recently, my wife encouraged me to get back in the gym. And I've been back in the gym on a daily basis for the last few months, actually. But what motivates me intrinsically is trying to do things that please, I'm a Christian, so I my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm not perfect, but that's what really motivates me on a daily basis is trying to be a good Christian, trying to be a good person, being a good husband, being a good father, and being a good friend. And for me, that involves a lot of meditation. It involves trying to figure out how to maintain my peace on a given day so that I can be peaceful to others around me. And that's really, what motivates me on a daily basis. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that's an easy thing to do, but it is something I strive to do on a daily basis.
Cool. Right on. I'm learning a ton about you, Milton. That's fantastic.
Don't
So,
make me bring up those Tough Mudder pictures. Y'all was like,
nah.
that's not you, that's AI.
Exactly. Well, it might be. I know you're skilled in AI as well. So tell us a little bit about it and taking into account that your young people, your kids.
Yeah.
In what ways do the portrayals of Black masculinity in media specifically contribute to the
Okay.
general misconception of Black men? When we start talking about Black men and that general fear of they're to be feared and the lack of self-control. What's it, sort of what do you say about that?
You know, I I think sometimes, I'm 5'8" and I'm 200 and some pounds, right? And I can't number the times that I get people come up to me throughout my life and say, "Hey, did you play football?" Now, Carl, you've seen me. I don't look like a football player. But I think that's part of it is it's like this lack of nuance, is lack of how we're portrayed and depicted or expected to be because we are Black men of a certain size or ilk or whatever phrase you want to use. And we're so much more complex than that. We're so much more diverse than that. I mean, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're authors, we're all these different things, philosophers, and the list goes on. And I think that the emphasis on our physicality sometimes is something that I would like to see there's less focus on in the media. And then when you talk about how we're portrayed in theater or in the arts sometimes is that we're so one-dimensional, but there's many actors who have broken through that glass ceiling. But when you start to look at who wins the Oscar and for what roles they win it for, it's typically something that's not as deep as we are as a collective. So by and large, that's the portrayal of who we are is a lot deeper than what sometimes the media shows us as. And the only way we can change that is to continue to be who we are, authentically who we are in those spaces, and bring awareness to it, as painful as it may be sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Appreciate that.
And that's one of the main reasons why, Carl and I wanted to start this podcast is to help show that, because everything you just said is behind the mission of this podcast, to be able to show that we are more than, athletes or entertainers and things like that. So I'm glad to know that you're in the mission with us.
Well, I do my best. My tagline on Instagram is, I'll use this platform to uplift and it sometimes inform, and that's my goal in life.
Yeah, awesome. So thinking about that, if you had to write out your life's mission statement, what would you say? Like, what would that mission statement be?
Um, huh. You know, I would say I exist to be a positive light in a sometimes dark world. Um, and I would say to always be kind to others, but more importantly, be kind to myself. And I think, COVID really exposed a lot of that in us, that we can't be all things to all people. When you have COVID and George Floyd, and you're getting these questions around, how do you feel as a Black man, or how do you feel about this or that, is that you have to find ways to protect your peace and be kind to yourself, such that you can be kind to others, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I exist to be a positive light in an otherwise dark world, always being kind to others, and more importantly, being kind to myself.
Awesome.
Yes, I'll probably steal that. Thank you. That's it.
Well, it's recorded, so if you steal it, they'll know where you got it from.
That's good. That's good for you. But remember, we can edit that. Just kidding.
Oh, okay.
So just playing with you. So let's
No, that's
let's
good.
pull out your magic wand for a second. And
Okay.
if there's one misconception society as a whole has about being a Black man,
Okay.
that you could just eradicate, that you could get rid of, what would that be? That one thing.
That we all don't look alike.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh gosh, I can't tell you the number of elevators I've been in, and I met the person a month ago, and all of a sudden, they're meeting me again for the first time, or they're calling me Jimmy, and my name is Milton. You know,
Yeah.
no, but in all seriousness, I think oftentimes we have to shrink to fit in, and to make other people comfortable about who we are versus being authentically who we are. And I have to bring this up, Carl, because it's so fresh in my mind. Um, Last night we had about 25, 30 people at my house, and they were all Black men. And that was the first time that I've had that many people at my house, and we laughed, we played dominoes, we told jokes, we networked, we ate, and we did a number of different things that were just authentically who we are. And when I think about society, normally I would feel uncomfortable because my surroundings don't necessarily look like that on a daily basis. But I felt more comfortable yesterday than I've ever felt, because it's like, this is where I live. This is who I am. And these are people that are extensions of me, and that's okay. I don't have to shrink who I am just because of where I've decided to live. And so when I think about a misconception, that we're people too. I can't think of I can't say anything more eloquent than that. Is we're people too.
Wow. Man, that's good. I really enjoyed that answer, man. So I mean, it sounds like last night was an amazing night. So to me, I would consider that a success, to be able to have that many Black men in your home, in your community, and be able to be authentic. So I'm curious, what does success look like for you?
My my wife always says it, and just giving your best and not giving up. I think that defines success in a lot of ways, because you can define the success by the place you live, or your bank account, or the title that you have. But at the end of the day, everyone started at a different place. And there are some stories out here, some narratives out here, and some people out here that have done some amazing things and have been given a lot less than most. And so when I say you're giving your best on a given day, and never giving up, I think that defines success. And for the listener, if you're doing that on a daily basis, you are very successful. And wherever you aspire to go, you'll get there eventually.
That's awesome. So that brings me to a general question. We ask all of our guests, because we know that you have wear multiple hats, right? But we always like to know, what is it that you do, or how do you show up, and what do you give back to in your community? And that could
Sure.
be your community with your kids, your family, your work, whatever that looks like, and what you call community.
Yeah. As in general, as a family, we serve. We've done a number of different things, from the proverbial feed my starving children, knitting gloves, working with an organization called Together for Good, where we take in families whose single moms need a respite for a period of time for a number of different reasons. um, as a mentor for Rites of Passage for the last 10 plus years, which is powered by the Minneapolis chapter of Jack and Jill. I serve as a trustee on the board of Minnehaha, and recently I'm an advisor for small businesses with Meta. So
Okay.
I try to give back in many different ways. I think that's important. It's important to me, and that's naturally who I am. I'm natural to want to see the best in everyone, and if given permission, try to pull out the best in them as well.
No, that's good. That's amazing. Um, so you have definitely, kind of shared a lot of nuggets that I've been jotting down here. And this next question is really kind of centered around, like, you talked about this in one of your earlier answers about what you think the narrative should be. So I'm
Hmm.
curious if you could expound on that a little bit more and just tell us, like, if someone was sitting down and they were listening to you and they were having a conversation, um, what would you say the narrative should be about being a Black man in our culture today, if someone was really trying to find out a little bit more about what that should be?
Hmm. When I read this question, I thought about a couple different things, and I found a quote, and the quote reads, "I am not a category. I am not a thing, a noun. I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, an integral function of the universe."
Mm.
And I look at that, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, rather than perpetrating, stereotypes, I think we should focus on that we are integral. Black men are an integral part of society. From the early years to now, we've done some great things, and we've done them in different spaces and places, and continue to do those things. And I think that we should be seen as such, as seen as someone that that have the ability to do more than what some may see as face value. So I was like, say, going back to, rather than perpetuating harmful stereotypes, the narrative should be to celebrate the achievements of African American men, or Black men, however you want to pronounce it, because we do a lot of things in a number of different fields. And that should be our narrative. It's not about who's not, the social media world. I think it's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes those narratives are pushed because it's easier to push those, the criminal side of things, or the non-productive side of society. And again, we are so much more than what we are portrayed to be. So I would like the narrative to be more positive, and I'm just going to continue to do my part to be a part of that.
So how can you do a lot of stuff? You're in a lot of spaces. How can
Sure.
people follow you, or how can they follow your journey, or follow you specifically?
Yeah, so I'm typically on two social media platforms. LinkedIn, my name is Milton Dodd. and I'm on Instagram as Milton_Dodd. It's pretty easy to find me, but that's typically where I spend my time. On LinkedIn, I'm focused more on my business side of things, and doing some things to positively uplift and share what's going on in our community. And on Instagram, like I say, my small contribution to this world is to uplift and sometimes inform. And if you look at my Instagram page, that's exactly what it is.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you, man, you certainly uplifted and informed us today with just a short amount of time that we've been able to kind of chat with you and interview you. But I really, really, really appreciate you being a guest on the show today. I know it goes by so quick, but they're really impactful and meaningful. I know I said that earlier, and all of your responses have kind of led to me saying it again, because we need more conversations like this in order to continue to change that narrative, one conversation at a time. So I appreciate you for being on the show this evening.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.